Hello, welcome to Duck Chat. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us today. I know I say every month is my favorite month, but I have ducks and I'm super excited for Duck Month. I've got little Charloquins, they're my favorite. So I'm so excited that we're talking about them this month. My name is Brittany Sweeney. I am the communications manager at the Livestock Conservancy. And here today we have some very special guests. We've got our resident poultry expert, Jeanette Behringer, our senior program manager, and John Alden from Hoover's Hatchery. How are you, John?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing great. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the breeding flock manager at Hoover's Hatchery. So I oversee all of the chicken flocks, and then we've been adding some duck flocks and goose flocks and turkey flocks and guinea flocks and a little bit of everything. We try to do a little bit of everything. So, but yeah, so I oversee all the flocks, and I work with acquiring new genetics and working with them to try to improve them within what we do. There's a lot of stuff that we're trying to do within our within our breeding program to make a better bird for our customers. So
that sounds awesome. Well, before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to ManaPro for sponsoring Duck Chats and Duck Month this month. So thank you to them. They're amazing. I'm going to play their sponsor video real quick, and then we'll be right back to jump in and talk about ducks. So just give us 1 minute.
Champions, colleagues, roommates, and personal trainers. Whatever role they play, they're an important part of our lives. In their quiet way, and their not-so-quiet way, they keep us young, on our feet, on the go. They pull us back to nature and push us toward the next adventure. And as much as we count on them, they count on us all the more. To nurture their lives with the same commitment, to protecting them, helping them grow and thrive. Treating them as well as they treat us, by giving them a little more of our lives. Because no matter what role they play, out here or in here, we're here to make their lives the best they can be. ManaPro, nurturing life.
All right, welcome back. Jeanette, who's your dog? Do you want your other special guest?
Okay. This is Amelie. You'll probably see her in the background. I have a new poodle puppy who's one of my new office dog, and so she's very interested in what we have to say on this chat, apparently.
She must also love ducks.
So I'm really excited to have John. He's a fellow poultry geek, and he's like, I don't know if we could talk for an hour. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We're talking about poultry here. Silly man. So yeah, Duck Month, and ducks are really an up and coming species. And I notice, like, when we're doing events, that there are more and more people really curious about ducks. And from your perspective, what would you tell people to suggest that they should add ducks to their farm?
Well, as far as ducks go, they're really great layers. They're really hardy birds. You'll up here in Iowa, it'll be 10 degrees outside, and there'll be a foot of snow, and the ducks will be running around and like it's nothing. So ducks are just a great all around bird. They're hardy. They're good meat birds too. They can be good to keep flies and stuff like that down, and which is kind of sounds weird because they're so wet. But in my experience, they've been really good at keeping fly and mosquito populations down, which is I really enjoyed it. So. And then they also, if you have some ducks that are just running loose, they're good foragers and cleaning up after other animals. If spilled grain from horses or something like that. So,
yeah, well, I found too some of them outlay the chickens that I've had, which really stunned me. They started laying earlier, and back when I had Buckeyes, I was keeping some Saxony ducks. And they way outlaid my Buckeyes by yards. And the eggs were larger and just beautiful. So I just couldn't get over how productive some of these ducks can be.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I've been told, I'm not a baker, but I've been told that it's great to use for baking and stuff because that the yolk of the ducks actually have a higher protein. So if you're looking for something to you know improve your baking, that's another option as well. And some people like them, say that they have richer flavor just as far as eating eggs as well. So, but yeah, they can be great. Great layers. They are great layers.
Yeah, and they I can't say that they make a fabulous creme brulee. And it's not the kind of egg that I'd make angel food cake with, but some of the heavier desserts. And my husband happened to be a pastry chef, so he used a bunch of the eggs for his goodies. And yeah, they're beautiful.
Sounds like I need to come visit sometime.
I know. And he's French, got the whole accent thing going on. So I digress. Interestingly, I don't think a lot of people know that prior to the 20th century, large-scale poultry was mostly duck production, and that was because they are less prone to disease and are hardier. And how do you find them compared to chicks? Do you find them hardier than chickens?
Yeah. So the biggest I overall they are definitely hardier. The biggest stumbling blocks that you can run into is day-old ducklings. They can be prone to having issues when first being started on water because they get too much into the water. But once you get them started and get them going, they're off to the races. So ducks overall, they're hardier. And like I said earlier, they're, in the middle. I know it's not winter right now, which not a bad thing. But in the middle of winter, it's they'll be running around like it's nothing outside. And so.
Yeah, I found in the winter, back when I was in New England and kept ducks, unless there's like a long, there's a lot of ice all over the place where they can slip just a little layer of hay and they're off and running in any kind of weather. But with the water, I had to laugh back when Brittany got her ducklings. Was it your husband was blogging about your ducks in the bathtub?
He's one of those, and so he took the tiny ones and put them in the bathtub and took a bunch of videos and then put them on social media, and his coworkers just went bonkers. They were so excited about it.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. So aside from the introducing them to water a little more slowly than they'd like, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges with raising ducks?
Again, the biggest thing is water, and so at least from my experiences, keeping their pens dry, keeping their environment dry. If you're, especially in the winter, you're going to be constantly breaking the ice, but you have to break the ice for the chickens too. But the ducks like to make a mess of it, and so like in my experience, my dad has ducks and geese, and what we've done is try to figure out ways that we can make it so that they can drink the water and not dive in the water, because that'll make the water last longer and it'll make it it'll be a better environment that the ducks will be in, because they won't be getting the entire pen wet. They can just try to keep it more isolated where the wetness is, so or the dampness.
A lot of people ask, do you need to have a pond if you've got ducks?
No, really, you don't need a pond at all. I mean, a lot of times you'll use those little those rubber troughs that you feed like cattle or something in, and that's plenty enough water for the ducks. Just just make sure they have fresh water every day, and they'll be happier. They'll be happy. So.
Well, the big challenge is I found is, they're dabblers, and so the first thing they do is muck up their water. Do you have any tricks on how to keep them from, really fouling up their water almost immediately when they're eating?
Yeah, so the big thing is, I mean, they will foul it up some because they'll have mud in their nostrils, and so they flush their nostrils, and that's what puts a lot of the mud in there. But if you can keep them physically out of the water, so like one thing that my dad and I had was, um, we have a water system that it's covered, so they can stick their heads in there, but they can't get in there, so they're not pooping in there, they're not getting washing off in there, so they have a pool where they're you know where they can clean off and stuff like that, but then they have their drinking water, which we keep fresh, twice a day or something like that, just to you know better benefit them. And then the cleaning water, you don't need to wash as much because you still have that fresh water that's being offered to them.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the diets? Because the diets are going to be a bit different than what you'd feed a chick. What are the primary considerations for duck diets?
Yeah, so for ducklings, you want to start them with um, a little bit higher protein, for the ducks, and well, really through the whole process, you keep them a little bit higher protein. Personally, what I use and what I've seen people use is typically like a meat bird, or even somewhat between a meat bird and a game bird feed, for the ducklings, to get some mass on them to start with. But then you have to be careful that you're not giving them too much protein, because then you can end up with issues like angel wing, which is when the tip of the wing kind of gets dislocated, and will get stuck like that if it's there too long, just because if the feather follicles get too heavy. But as they get older, you need to have, about 20, 22, 23% when they're first couple weeks, and then down to probably around 18 to 20, until they're laying. And if you're gonna have them lay right away, then you keep them on like an 18% protein, layer type feed. But if you just need to have them, if you're kind of keeping them off season, you don't need to have them lay or anything like that. You can have something like a 14-15% maintenance diet that you can put them on. So.
What about calcium supplementation? Do you offer them oyster shell like you would chickens?
I don't offer any additional oyster shell. I haven't really had any issues with shell issues, from that either. So there's already some calcium in the diet, and they typically don't need any additional calcium to help form the eggs or the shells.
All right. So what's your preferred type of housing for ducks?
Personally, I like shelters with runs, or pastures. Like so what I keep going back to my dad, but he has an old loafing shed from that we used to have cattle in, and that's kind of what we have. And we're building runs out the front of it so that we can separate the ducks by breed, but we can still, and that way they get some access to the outside, and they get some access to the indoors, to get out of the weather too. And you try to keep the indoors separated so that they have dry bedding on the inside, and then because of the outside, especially if you're giving them water outside, it'll keep that drier. If you're doing it all inside, it'd be good to have some sort of slats or wire. PVC coated wire would be the best. I want to do like regular wire because ducks are heavier, where you have the water, so that way it can drain out. Just again, you want to keep the bedding dry, and so that the birds can stay warm, because the wet bedding doesn't help with maintaining heat either at all. So
yeah. And how about flock structure? Like, say people want to have just a small group. What would be your minimum size for ducks to be happy? And then if you're wanting to breed them, what would you suggest for male to female ratio? And maybe that's different for different breeds, but
yeah. So as far as keeping birds, I think typically, I think 3 to 4, the ducks will be happy, and they'll be able to bond with each other. And typically, when you have a smaller flock like that, they'll bond to you more as well. So they'll be, they'll form a bond with you, and have that have a closer relationship with you, I guess is one way to say it. As far as breeding, most of the breeds, I would go about, typically it's about 1 to 5, 1 drake to 5 hens. But um, for some of the heavier breeds, like maybe not so much like the Appleyards or Saxonies, but the Ruins and Aylesbury's, the heritage type Ruins and Aylesbury's especially, probably closer to 1 to 3, 1 to 4 maybe. And then it's always good to keep an extra drake just in case something happens. It's if you're trying to breed and you're down to the bare minimum, then that's exactly when something's going to happen, and you're going to be SOL. So
yeah. So Brittany, is it true? Have your ducks bonded with you?
A little bit. I give them peas until they run over for treats. But mostly we have 4, so they're bonded with each other, and they like have a little committee meeting about everything. So.
Yeah. John, what would you do if you've got, you've got 4 ducklings and 3 out of the 4 end up being drakes? Is that going to be a problem for the one duck that's there?
Yeah, that would definitely be an issue, because the drakes both will be fighting each other, and then they'll be picking on the hen pretty hard. It'd be best to go down to just a pair, if you don't want to get any more, or to get a couple more hens, or get rid of the either whether you butcher or you sell them or whatever you do, the extra drakes, and then get a couple hens, just to that way the hen's not getting picked on as much.
Yeah, and for our audience, can you tell them how to differentiate a drake from a duck? Maybe some folks don't know.
Yeah, so when they're as they're maturing, you can tell a lot by their voice. The females have the typical quack, where the males are more of a raspy quack. Borderline quack, and this is for the ducks that are not Muscovies, because Muscovies are a separate species, and so they kind of are a little bit different. But yeah, for most of the heritage ducks, you have the quack, and versus the raspy, and then as they get older, the drakes will get a curl to their tail, and so that's another way to tell for birds that are like the Ruins, the Appleyards, those ones that you can tell by the color. That's usually not until I think it's their 3rd or 4th molt that they'll get the adult plumage, and so even the young ones, all of the birds will look like females. And even one thing that a lot of people don't know is even like the Welsh Harlequins in the summer, they'll molt out, and you might say, well, shoot, where did my drake go? Well, they go into an eclipse plumage, which means that the drake will feather out looking like a hen for that summertime. Just kind of a survival technique that they have. Kind of going off on a tangent, but
no. So I've certainly seen a rise in interest for ducks. Has the hatchery seen an increase in interest lately?
Yeah, I think just like anything, the chickens kind of not peaked, but they increased a lot, and then we're seeing more interest in ducks and geese and all sorts of stuff. And I mean, one big thing that I think points out is, and they're a competitor of ours, but still it's great. Metzer just built another hatchery, and so they're expanding quite a bit, and so that shows there is a lot of demand for ducks out there, and it seems like everyone's trying out the backyard thing, and they try the chickens, and it's kind of a hook, and then it's the gateway bird. So they kind of expand and try out everything else. So
yeah, and they're just charming as all get out. I have a great story from my zoo days where we spent a ton of money on a new penguin exhibit. And it was a black tie event for the opening, and everybody had champagne and strawberries, and everybody was supposed to go to the penguins. And right next to the penguin exhibit was the farmyard. And there was this Indian runner duck with her babies. And everybody went into the farmyard to watch the ducks. And nobody was in front of the penguins because the penguins are just sitting there and kind of boring.
Yeah.
And the director got so angry, he made us close the farmyard so everybody would look at the penguins. But people really get charmed with ducks, and especially like the runners are just so goofy. You're like, how is that possible? They're standing like that. And And
yeah.
have you seen any particular breed that's been most popular for you guys?
A lot of the heritage breeds are pretty popular. A lot of it's for us, it's you know, the Saxonies and the Appleyards. We just can't seem to get enough of those. But like you said, the Indian runners, those are always we've got some different, you know, non-commercial. What's the phrase that you guys use? Non-industrial Indian runners. We've got whites and grays and blacks and blues, and that we're starting off with, or we're expanding our flocks on, and those have been, we just can't seem to produce enough of those either. So it's a great thing to see people picking up these heritage birds, whether it's for, you know, for meat or for, you know, just to have some pretty looking birds to run around their backyard. It's great to see the interest in them.
So people are going for both the meat side and the egg laying, or is one more popular than the other?
I think they're going for both, and I think, you know, really a lot of people are just going for pets or for ornamental. You know, Saxonies, silver appleyards, and runners, they're all beautiful birds, and, you know, not to take away from the Swedish or the buffs, but they're unique, and they're very, very different looking. And so to have something that's that'll stick out in the farmyard like that I think that can be a big attraction, and hopefully that hooks them in to say, okay, well, shoot, I ordered 20, you know, silver appleyard ducklings, and now I've got 10 drakes that I've got to butcher, and they say they find out what a great meat bird that the silver appleyards are, and what great layers they are, because they're really the silver appleyards, and I think Saxonies are the same way. They're just they're a triple threat. They've got the ornamental, they've got the egg production, and they've got the meat. So
yeah, we dabbled with Saxonies, and they made really great table birds. And I'm working on a article right now on finishing and trying to get opinions from a bunch of different breeders as far as timing for processing and finishing. And I think our mistake was not letting them put on enough fat. You know, because that duck fat is like liquid gold. You know, it's really phenomenal stuff. But, you know, once we got the hang of it, we figured out, you know, processing them a little bit later in the season worked out better for us. And it really is a fabulous meat that I'm not sure why more people don't try duck, you know, even for just special occasions. And we've even taken some duck and made prosciutto, which came out fabulous. Really good stuff. And my husband doesn't eat pork, and I'm a bacon lover. And so turkey bacon, I'm like, yeah, but duck bacon, oh my goodness.
Might have to get a recipe from you or something.
Yeah, well, I cheat with the bacon, and I buy it from D'Artagnan, but it's really good. But the prosciutto, yeah, and we hung it in the refrigerator, and it just came out really, really well. You just got to be patient. You've got to pay attention to how much water you're losing, and, you know, pay attention to the details. And it's not rocket science. It's real easy to do. If you got a little space in your fridge, you can do it. And yeah, I love duck. It's one of my favorite things to eat. And we like rotisserie duck too. And there's just so many different ways to cook it. And anybody out there that's interested in learning about cooking duck, I just got turned on to a new book called Duck, Duck, Goose. And it is supposed to be one of the better books for learning techniques in cooking duck, and he talks a lot about wild ducks, but the same techniques can be used for heritage ducks too. So I'm real excited. I ordered my copy the other day. So,
Nice.
So what heritage breeds do you guys offer right now?
So we have Saxony's apple yards, like I mentioned. We've got Buffs, Swedish, Cayugas, Anconas, and then one that we're kind of working on building up is the Dark Campbell, which is kind of a cool bird that really haven't heard much about, but I stumbled upon some, and they're just a gorgeous bird. And then of course we have some of our colored runners are heritage type too. So.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, do we want to open up the mic for some questions out there? Have we got any questions from the audience?
Oh, yes. People got lots to say, which is awesome. Let's see. Randy says, hello, John. Hi, Randy. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Hi, Heather. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Heather says, I have Saxony and Ancona ducks. Well, that's super exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll actually be having an Ancona breeder later this month, so you'll have to stay tuned.
Nice.
Yes. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for joining us today. Dennis says, hey, John, good work. So keep it up. Hi, Marissa. Thanks for joining us today. Marissa says, I find that ducks are a bit messy compared to other birds.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. We got lots of comments. Okay, I'm trying to find a question. Randy uses the water the ducks muck up to use for watering plants. It's a great fertilizer. I can say
good
yes.
idea.
I can do that as well. It's perfect. Hi, Terry. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Terry says, my Ancona drake started to literally grab week-old hatchlings and shake them until he killed one, then went on to start the same thing with another. He went into a pot of gumbo before that went any further. Yes.
Yes, ducks make good gumbo. I can vouch for that.
Hi, Mariano. Thanks for joining us today. Mariano says, for enrichment, we use pond fish food with our Dutch hookbills. That sounds like fun.
I've heard that. Yeah, I think like catfish food too.
Yeah, and I think there's a floating duck diet that's out there that's available at feed stores, and I can't remember what company it was that put it out, but back in my zoo days, we used to use floating duck diet, and that helped to keep the wild birds away from the feed, because a lot of times if the feed was on the shore or in a food bucket, the sparrows and pigeons and stuff would get at it. So we turned to floating duck diet, and then there was also a sinking duck diet. So just finding ways to keep birds out of the out of
was
the
that
food.
Missouri?
Was really Excuse me?
Was it the Missouri feed?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. And this brings up another thing that we should probably talk about is avian influenza, and how, when there's a scare for migratory birds, what do you suggest that duck owners do if we know AI's out there, and, how do you protect your ducks?
I mean, the best thing to do with when there's a scare of AI, or that there's AI in the area, is and it's, I hate to do it, but you gotta pen up the birds the best you can, and even if if you have some sort of enclosed run, that would be the ideal. That way, wild birds can't get in there to interact with your birds, and you're kind of keeping a barrier between your birds and the outside, but you also want to be careful about what you're doing, and if you make sure you're not tracking anything in, because avian influenza, it doesn't affect ducks as much as it does chickens or turkeys, but they can carry it and they can pass it along. So if you have other birds, and the ducks could be the vector that the disease comes into the barn, into your place, or it could be a reservoir for AI too. And if they come around and your birds test positive, then it's not going to be a happy ending for anyone. So
No. I know that England just had a good bout of it, and I was talking with some of my waterfowl buddies over there, and how their birds were quite unhappy to be, stuck inside a barn for weeks on end. But that's all you can really do is bring them inside and wait until the danger passes. It's just not worth the risk, especially if you've got expensive ducks you put a lot of time into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
We
I know you said there
do.
was a load.
Let's see. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us today. She says, where can I learn more about how to set up a breeding program? Interested in small-scale breeding and conservation.
Certainly, there's some great books out there. The Stories Guides to Ducks is a great one. We do have materials on our website about setting up small breeding groups and how to maximize genetic diversity within that. The best thing is if you can get stock from a breeder that's got maybe a couple of different lines, 2 or 3 lines of birds within their flocks, and then start with a drake that's unrelated to the 2 females, who in turn aren't related to each other, and start out with a trio like that. That way the drake can be bred to any female offspring that are produced, and get started that way. Or maybe, you can get eggs from several different sources if you want to start with eggs. But yeah, the more diversity you can bring into your program, from the start, the better.
Great question. Marissa says, ducks were the gateway bird for me. Same. Shatim, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, says, I keep ducks and they lay a good amount of eggs, but I have a difficult time selling them because their eggs become dirty. Please advise on nesting boxes.
So what we use a lot for nesting boxes are just wood boxes that we've built, and we put bedding in there. You typically wood shavings, and you got to change the shavings quite often, but or add more shavings in there, and keep it dry, but also duck eggs, that you can wash them, and they should be pretty easy to wash off. And the quicker you can wash them, the better, because it deters any bacteria from getting into the eggs. So yeah, if you can get but if between those couple factors, you can try to deter the eggs from getting dirty to begin with, and then clean them off as quick as you can, and try to avoid them getting stained and stuff like that. So
yeah, and like with chicken eggs, you want to clean with warm water, never with cold.
Yeah.
And and if you're washing them, then that kind of takes the bloom off them, so they should probably be refrigerated after that.
Yeah.
Great question. Hi, Vivian. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Vivian says, for breeding stock, before you start gathering eggs to hatch, what protein and energy levels do you like to feed? Is there a way to feed a whole cracked grain mix and still have enough protein?
Well, I don't know a lot about whole or crack grain diets. I don't know if Jeanette might know more about that, but it varies a little bit between breeds, and whether you're trying to just get eggs or trying to get breed production or egg produce hatching eggs. Typically for like the hatching eggs, you want around 15% protein, with the energy. I'm looking at my notes because I don't know that off the top of my head. About 4.5% is where the diets that I've worked with is where they had the crude fat or the energy at, for in the diets that I've worked with. But yeah, overall, I'm not sure with the whole or cracked grain. I know a lot of people use a wide variety of diets. I just don't have much experience with those in particular.
Mm-hmm. Well, with a whole grain or cracked, I have to ask if there were, vitamin supplements going in with that too. I know that I actually talked with Vivian yesterday about geese, but I know she has some beautiful pasture out there, so they might be able to get the vitamins that they need from grazing in pasture. But if you're going to be starting to hatch in the early spring, the grass and the insects and stuff may not have come in. So I might pay attention to, feeding out a whole a complete diet rather than the cracked or whole grains, because I'm not sure if they're going to get the vitamins and minerals they need that during the growing season, where they can eat all kinds of stuff to balance out. They might not be able to do that in the early spring. So the NutriBalancer is probably a good one.
Yeah, and sometimes there's diets that are more, and I don't know the different. I don't know what NutriBalancer is personally, but there's some diets that are more concentrated, so you could take these pellets and mix them with cracked corn and oats and stuff like that, and that way you'll get the vitamins and everything you need. And then they'll also you'll have, and then you'll get you'll still have the cracked diet, so it'll be a mixture of like pellets and cracked or something like that. So. And then alfalfa can be beneficial too, but you just have to watch how you feed it, just to make sure that you're not having any issues with sour crop or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, great question. I think Elisa has another question. She says, she goes to more of a line breeding system after I get a good population going. In terms of books, I've read Hold to Read. That's the stories book, Raising Ducks. And done a lot of Googling, but I'm having trouble understanding how to actually structure a breeding program once I build up my initial flock. Could you maybe talk through that or send some good resources?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Livestock Conservancy, and it may be more focused towards chickens, but they have a great, if I remember right, they have a great resource on breeding and establishing a line and how to breed a line without inbreeding. And I forget what it's called.
It's managing breeds for a secure future, and we have chapters on that very subject. Line breeding and inbreeding. Of course, if it works, it's line breeding. If it doesn't, it's inbreeding. And so, it'll actually walk you through that process. And that's something that you can get on our bookstore. And, like any tool, it can be really powerful, but in the wrong hands or used incorrectly, it could be a real disaster. So, we've certainly had some lively discussions about that kind of thing. And, for my breeding program with my chickens, I maintain several lines, and then every couple of years we'll take a son from one line and breed it to the other line females and vice versa. But I don't want to homogenize the population. And so, maintaining separate lines is really important for diversity, but sometimes you've got to cross a little bit in, because otherwise you run into inbreeding issues like infertility and maybe some genetic problems. And but I think it's a numbers game. In order to avoid trouble, you really have to get a good number of animals within your population so that you're able to do some good selection. And if a problem crops up, then, it's no big deal to cull those. And when I say good numbers, like with my flocks, I'm maintaining flocks of, 20 breeders of each line. which probably is on the low side, but I just don't have the space for more. Whereas John, you're about to go through your flocks, and you've got how many craft coolers now? Like 350?
350 or so, yeah.
Yeah. And that's where you guys are at advantage. Back in the day, a lot of people would raise that many, but these days, there aren't that many folks that are capable of raising hundreds of birds at a time.
Yeah, I have an old book. I forget what the farm was, but they said that they were raising out thousands of white Minorcas every year, and it's just like blows my mind because white Minorcas are practically extinct now. But back then, you could raise out thousands and take them to the local city and sell them left and right, and and everyone, people would buy a rooster to go on their laying hens and stuff like that, and but yeah, anymore that's kind of gone to the wayside. So
yeah, and I see Vivian's mention of Harvey Usury's book, and yeah, Harvey's brilliant. And I think if you Google clan mating, it gives you a good outline of, the basic type of breeding program that I was just trying to outline a few minutes ago. It goes by, a number of different names, but he calls it clan mating. But that'll give you the basic principles for how to maintain separate bloodlines and then cross over periodically, but try to maintain as much diversity as possible. And, just Google usury and clan mating, and you should get his article on it. It's really well done.
yeah, and I think Dwayne Urch did something similar to that when he was doing breeding, and he would have, the females would stay in the same pen or something like that, and then he would just switch the males.
Mm-hmm.
Each generation, each year, the males from this pen will go to the next pen or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's very loose thoughts, but that's kind of what his setup was, from what I understand. So
yeah,
Great. Well, it looks like all our questions, unless anybody has any burning last minute questions, send those in as comments. Jeanette, did you have more questions?
Well, John, what is your personal favorite duck? You got one you like over the others?
Well, so like I said, my dad has ducks and geese, and I'm kind of at fault for a lot of that. What we have is silver apple yards, and that's has quickly become, they're just a stunning duck, I think. Another one I think I really enjoy is Anconas, and I hadn't worked with them before I came to the hatchery, and they're just a heck of a duck. They're wonderful egg layers, and they've got a decent body on them, and just a really nice all around duck. I was kind of surprised when we started work with them how much I actually enjoyed them. So yeah, those I can never pick one thing. So those two would probably be the two that I'd be most likely to call my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, they are pretty nice ducks, and I kind of lean towards the Saxonies. The males are stunning, and they just look so different from any other duck breed out there. Interestingly, we had a gentleman who I work with on a lot of waterfowl articles. He writes for us, and he just a few years ago had discovered that the Ancona, which was thought to have been an English duck, is actually an American duck breed. And that was quite a surprise for us. And he was able to dig up some information on early poultry shows and an announcement of this new duck breed that was created called the Ancona.
Nice.
So that was really exciting. That was something that we didn't realize. We were always told it was an English duck, and he happens to be British and was like, with the British Waterfowl Society. And he's like, nope, they are not British. And so that was quite eye-opening. And something, for all you duck people out there, we're always on the lookout for some old flocks of Anconas, especially up in New England and New York, because we think there may still be some of the old lines out there. I've always got my ears open to see if we can find any. And there were a few that I had a chance to visit up in Maine. And not too many, but they were from an old flock that had been around for a long, long time and predated Holderried's work with the Ancona. So, they look like Anconas, and, they, for all intents and purposes, I believe that's what they were. So that was kind of a cool find. But if anybody knows of old flocks that are out there, please let us know, because the breed certainly could use some more diversity, and it would be a shame to lose any of those old flocks. And you never know, being a Yankee myself, we're pretty stubborn and hang on to stuff we probably shouldn't. And I know there's got to be people out there hanging on to these ducks. So, would love to hear from anybody who sees them. I also wanted to point out, if people are thinking of breaking into ducks, or especially people that have duck experience and want to do something for conservation, the ducks that really need a lot of help are the Aylesbury and the old-fashioned Rouens, because they're such heavy-bodied birds and slow-growing and big. There aren't a lot of them out there. They're not as productive. You do have to have some deep water for them to be able to breed. Deep meaning, a couple of feet, because they're so big. Or John, how do you guys breed your Aylesbury and Rouens? Do you offer them water?
So we don't have any Aylesbury's. We tried Rouens this year, and we had mixed results with them, and we just couldn't continue them, just because it didn't quite fit into our system.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually had pretty good results, just not having necessarily deep water, but just having little wading pools for them. And so it's I think they're a lot more reasonable than a lot of people. The big thing that you have to do is I think what a lot of people miss is they get them too big and too heavy, and then they just can't breed. Or if they breed, they can't breed successfully, and so they get few eggs, they get poor fertility, and then they get fed up with it. But you really need to almost restrict the feed on them, just because they get so large. They're such a big duck. You have to it's kind of similar with Toulouse, the heritage Toulouse. They get big, and they get to the point where it's just hard for them to mate. And but they can survive on, or not survive, but you can do a diet where it's half oats and half regular feed, and they'll do well, and they'll get the nutrients that they need, and that way, but they'll stay leaner than, because they're just like a lot of meat birds. They're bred to eat. And so, but yeah, I know a few breeders that don't have big deep pools, and they're still able to breed them successfully.
Mm-hmm.
So,
any other final questions out there?
We got one more question. Marissa wants to know, where's the best place to purchase old lines? She loves Rouens.
So, the best place to find them is probably at a poultry show. There's some breeders here in the Midwest that have them. Ewart's Country Waterfowl. You could probably find them on Facebook, but they ship ducklings from them. But other than that, there's not a lot of people that ship ducklings. So the best bet that you're going to be able to find them is through a show and making contacts there. And because they may not be there at the show, and you may have to say, well, you have birds this year, well, you don't have any birds left, so I need to contact you next year, or something like that. But yeah, Ewart's Country Waterfowl has both Rouens and Aylesbury's that they hatch and sell ducklings from. So
yeah, shows are a great place, and the thing to keep in mind is when you're going to buy these birds, one, there's not a lot of them out there, so you'll have to be patient, and two, if you're buying from a guy that's exhibiting good quality birds, expect to pay him for it. What you're buying is not an expensive bird. You're buying the years that breeder put into producing that bird. And John, you can attest to it. Poultry breeding's not easy. You have to make very clear, educated decisions on the animals you're going to keep, and you have to over time develop an eye for it. And there's a lot to it. And so if you want good quality birds, just appreciate all the effort that was put into producing that particular animal. And I was looking at some birds the other day that a breeder wanted to sell me, and he wanted to sell them at $200 a piece. Well, he's been breeding them since the 1960s, and they're by far the finest birds out there of that particular breed, in my opinion, and every bit worth $200. Now, my husband would kill me if I spent $200 a bird. I would love to, but if I was to get into that breed and want a good start, you betcha I'd pay that to get a good start.
Because to get to the place that a lot of these breeders have them, you're going to spend way more than that to get them. I was talking to one breeder because I used to breed Anconas, and I was talking to one breeder. He's like, "Yeah, I did the math. I think I have about $40,000 into my my breeding flock of Anconas." It's like, holy smokes! So,
yeah, I'm frightened to do the math on my birds. Don't tell Fred. But anyways, John, it's been a delight talking to you. I got to ask you, you're going to be at the Ohio National, the king of all poultry shows this year?
Yeah, I plan to be there, and I'm hoping to make the APA National in Fayetteville, Arkansas, too.
Okay.
So
when is that?
I think it's a couple weeks, but I'm not sure when it is.
Yeah.
I can look it up really quick, but.
Well, for anybody out there that's never been to a poultry show, the Ohio National in Columbus is the mother of all shows. And if you've ever wondered what it sounds like to have 10,000 birds in one room, and most of what you're going to hear are the call ducks. They're probably the loudest.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating show, and the who's who of poultry breeders goes, and I think it's the second weekend in November.
Yeah.
And just a fabulous place to learn about poultry and meet the people doing the work. And John, how's the chocolate turkey project coming along?
I'm not sure. I haven't been in touch with Alan or anyone. Recently with those chocolate turkeys. So I don't know. I know they applied for acceptance a year or two ago, probably 2 years ago.
And the Anconas are trying to get APA approved or APA recognized. That's been a long time in coming too. I think we'll talk a lot about that when our next guest, Amy, will be on, and she's been leading the charge for Anconas getting onto the APA standard of perfection. So it should be a fun conversation.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise.
Thanks for
having me. Did you have any housekeeping to finish up with, Brittany?
Yep, I'll just say thanks to John. Please check out Hoover's Hatchery online, and that's, if you're just listening in, it's HOOVERSHATCHERY.com. So check them out online. Get to know John. You can also find them on Facebook at Hoover's Hatchery. Anything? This is our shameless plug section. So did you have anything you wanted to plug, John?
Not really. I'm excited to be working with. We've got some different heritage birds that we're trying to add on. We've got, we've got some nice strains of Menorcas and Anconas that we've been able to add in chickens. So so hopefully we'll be able to work more with some more heritage birds in the future.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you can always support heritage breeds by joining the Livestock Conservancy. We're a membership organization, nonprofit, and we could sure use your help.
Absolutely.
Great organization.
Big thank you to all of our members and supporters for helping make Duck Chats and all of our conservation programming possible. We appreciate you. And if you're not a member, as Jeanette was talking about, you can become a member online, livestockconservancy.org. And also a big thank you to ManaPro today for sponsoring this Duck Chat and for sponsoring Duck Month. We appreciate you. And as we close out, we'll be back next week with a Woolly Wednesday. So tune in, all our fiber artists and sheep people. So get to know more fun things about that. I don't know. I don't know where I was going. Just like started a sentence and then had a brain fart. So, but yes, please tune in again next week. And then the week after, we'll be back with a Duck Chat with the Ancona Ducks. And I'm going to play our sponsor video again. Thanks again to ManaPro, and we hope everyone has a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Champions, colleagues, roommates, and personal trainers. Whatever role they play, they're an important part of our lives. In their quiet way, and their not-so-quiet way, they keep us young, on our feet, on the go. They pull us back to nature and push us toward the next adventure. And as much as we count on them, they count on us all the more. To nurture their lives with the same commitment, to protecting them, helping them grow and thrive. Treating them as well as they treat us, by giving them a little more of our lives. Because no matter what role they play, out here or in here, we're here to make their lives the best they can be. ManaPro, nurturing life.